I was going to Greece and Italy, and then I found out that the Italian won't let me in to Greece. And I got the airline and paid the whole thing. Big mess. Big headache. But I'm happy I caught it. Right. I don't know why I had the solution that there may be a problem. But I don't want the border and said, no, sorry, go home.
Great move.
Yeah.
You want to send to the group that we're on?
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready to roll. We're running a little late. We gotta, every second. Wednesday night. Second.
I'm gonna try and come. It's right. We're trying to come.
Able to come, that would be great.
Liquid?
Liquid, yeah. So, Lakewood, New Jersey.
What would be great on the weekend? What would be the Jersey for the weekend?
No, we can do what we can do. You know, we've got to work with what we got.
Exactly.
Night in life,
How
right?
old's your son?
She's in the 20s.
That's good.
Yeah.
Very good.
My father's name. My father passed away 20-something years ago.
Oh wow.
28 years ago. Something.
Beautiful.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. You sent to the group?
You know.
Okay. We give them an opportunity. Maybe they'll start replying soon. Okay, we are on Mem Aleph Omen Aleph 41a. We said yesterday on 41a about the pasuk of the order of the pasuk of why the pasuk speaks about all the 7 species of Israel. Joseph, have you been receiving the text from the group? You're part of the group text? You were added to the group text?
Yeah.
Very good. I'm happy it's working out. Very good. Okay, so we're on Mem Aleph and Aleph. We were speaking yesterday of why the Torah, the 7 species that the Torah speaks about. So one opinion, the Gemara says that the 7 fruits of Israel, the importance of the Torah telling us these 7 fruits is telling us a certain hierarchy of what comes first, what comes second. Morning, Mr. Haber. And that's what the Gemara said yesterday, one opinion, why those 7 fruits, which bracha would you say first? And then we brought a different opinion that says that the 7 fruits of Israel are coming for a different purpose, to tell us certain laws that apply throughout the Torah that are connected to these fruits or these products, these 7 species. They have very wide-ranging effects on many areas of Jewish law. These fruits play a role. And yesterday we spoke about the wheat, how it plays a role about coming into a house that has the nega of tsaras, that has the plague of leprosy. And if a person stays there for a certain amount of time, when he comes in, then he will go ahead and his clothing will also become tameh as a result of staying there a certain amount of time. And we spoke about the idea how much the time has to be, the time to eat a half a loaf of bread. And we spoke about the bread was the bread from wheat bread, and so on and so forth. Therefore, there was a necessity to say wheat. We're up to the next thing, Se'ora. 5 lines from the bottom. Mr. Haber, you have it. 5 lines from the bottom. The last word of the line is Se'ora. Morris, you got it. Mem Aleph Omen Aleph, 41a. Right? Se'ora, barley. Right? The Torah says, Eretz Chita u'Se'ora. It's a land of wheat and barley. And why does the Torah tell us that Israel is a land of barley, that it's known for its barley, such a great land? So the Gemara says because of the following halacha. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, etzem kesora, a bone the size of a barley. If there's a bone from a dead body, from a corpse, that's the size of a barley, mitamei b'maga. a person who comes in contact, who touches that bone, if the bone was the size of a barley, which obviously is very small, the size of a barley, that person will become tamei, will become contaminated by coming in contact with the dead body, even though it wasn't a whole body. What was it? It was just it was a small piece, it was a piece of a bone that was very small, the size of a barley. Metamei b'maga u'b'masa. And not only a person will become tamei if he comes in contact with that bone the size of a barley, if he carries the bone the size of a barley without touching it. Let's say it's in a box. You have a box, and inside the box is the little piece of a bone the size of a barley of a dead body. That will contaminate the person as a result of that's something called masa. Not only does the person become contaminated by actually touching the actual body, by carrying the body. This person carries a coffin. When the person carries a coffin, no one's touching the body. The people who are carrying, when they go to a funeral, they're carrying the coffin, they're not touching the body. The body's contained within the coffin, but they're carrying it, and that also contaminates the people. That's called masa. That's called lifting up, carrying. That's tumah. If he lifts up the coffin, right. Vicinity, as long as he's not under the same roof. If he's under the same roof, then being in the same room, that will make the person contaminated. And that's what the Gemara is going to make a distinction right now. In this bone, the size of a barley, if you come in contact with this bone the size of a barley, or you carry the bone the size of the barley, that would contaminate the person. But if this bone the size of a barley is in the room, let's say it'll be in this room right now, a bone from a dead body the size of a barley, a kohen or any person would walk into this room would not become contaminated. That's not enough to contaminate from being in under the same roof. To be under the same roof, you need a larger amount of the body of the dead person in order to contaminate. Just the size of a barley is not sufficient to make the person contaminated. So how big does it have to be? So it says a size of a kazayas, of an olive size of the flesh of a person, of a person. If there's an olive size of the flesh of a person, it will make a person tummy in the tent. Right. Correct. It's not right, but it's definitely much. Olive size is much bigger than the olive size of the flesh of the mace. Okay. Now the Gemara continues. So that's why I need to know about the barley. I got to know about barley. What I got to know about olive? I got to know the laws of barley, how it applies to laws of tumah, of contamination. Third thing, Geffen. The Torah says that it's Chita Sora Geffen. It's a land of Geffen. Of Geffen is vine of grapes. Why do we know what's important about that? Today, I don't know if I said hello to Mike. Mike, good morning, Mike. Geffen Kedei Revi'at Yayin L'Nazir. And Nazir, we just came off last week's parasha. We learned about.
Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning. Sorry, I have my earpieces on. I have to reach my phone. Good morning.
Morning. We spoke last week. We learned about a Nazir. A Nazir is someone who makes a vow that he's not going to drink, and that he wants to become a Nazir. And there's certain laws that apply to a Nazir. He can't drink wine. He can't come in contact with a dead body. Right? Certain laws with a Nazir. So now,
Rabbi,
yes.
I was thinking about you when we were reading the Torah, reading the Shabbat, because I couldn't remember the reason that you told us that the Nazir was connected to the Brachat Kohanim. What was the reason? I know we spoke about it.
I have to think which point. Yes.
think when we did it either in Brachot or in Ta'anit, we saw that the Nazir, I don't know why you bring up the Nazir now, but it was connected with the Kohanim. It was the next pasuk over.
Yes.
Maybe
Okay.
we can review it after the class.
Yes. Yes. Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay. Geffen. So what do we need to, good morning, Shmuel Rave. Good morning. Okay, also, by the way, I want to remind everyone that next week we're having the wedding of my son is next week. So looking forward, anybody's able to come, everybody's invited. If you didn't receive the invitation, now I'm giving you the invitation. I'll list one of the people who command the chat to send out. To send it out. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Hope everybody received it. If you didn't receive it, please be in touch. Okay. Hope the post office is working well. Okay. Geffen Kidei Revius Yayin LeNazir. A Nazir, as we said, one of his restrictions now to drink wine. At which point, how much wine would he drink that he would violate the prohibition of the Nazir? There's something called, by the way, even though we're talking about a certain shear, a certain amount, there's something called chatzi shear. There's something called a half of an amount, meaning even though we're saying about these shurim, you need to have a certain amount in order for it to be, to let's say, for instance, when it comes to eating not kosher, to get lashes, a person has to eat a kazayas, an olive size of pork, let's say, or not whatever, not kosher food. But what about if a person says, you know what, Rabbi, I'm not going to eat an olive size. I want to have a little bit, less than an olive size. What is this? What's the law regarding having less than the shear, than the amount? A guy says Pesach, eat the prohibition in order to get the punishment for chametz. That strong punishment is a kazayit of chametz. If he eats the kazayit of chametz, he gets that strong punishment. So what about the guy who says, Rabbi, I'll eat a little bit of chametz, a little bit, I won't have a kazayit. So that's called chatzi shear. And there's a machloket, when the Torah forbade something, does the Torah also forbade any amount of that item? But to get the punishment, you have to reach a certain amount. But any amount of violation, any amount that I would eat not kosher, I violated a Torah law. But to get lashes, you have to eat a certain amount. That's a machloket in the Gemara. But of course, at least rabbinically, it'll be forbidden to do that. And some say even biblically it's forbidden to have any amount of something that is forbidden. I just want to just point that out. Even though we're talking about shurim, you have to have a certain amount in order to reach a certain amount to fulfill this. But any amount would be an issue by certain things. Good morning, Avram. Good morning, Shmuel. Good morning, Yosef at Tzaddik. Good morning, Sammy. Okay, so the Gemara continues. The Gemara continues. Kidei revius yayin leNazir. The reason for why the Torah talks about the wine of the land of Israel, because the wine plays a very important role, is when it comes to the Nazir, you need to know that a reviyit of wine is the amount that if he drinks, he would be subject to all those ramifications of if he drinks the wine. And we know about Reviyat Yayin, we know about Shabbat. We know about Reviyat, you need to make Kiddush on a Reviyat Yayin. On a Reviyat, and how much is a Reviyat Yayin? So Rav Avadia says around 3 ounces or so, that area, 3 ounces. So Rav Moshe Feinstein says Friday night you should have 4.5 ounces for Friday night Kiddush. But that's Reviyat Yayin, because Reviyat Yayin is something of significance. It's a Reviyat, it's an amount. It's a few ounces. It's not an ounce. It's not 2 ounces. It's at least 3 ounces or so. So therefore, that's the amount of wine you have to make kiddush on. The cup should contain that amount, and that's the amount of wine that a person who's a nazir, if he drinks that amount, then he reached the level that he's going to be subject to certain levels of punishment or some whatever for doing that. Te'ena, the Gemara continues. Te'ena, the figs. What's the necessity telling us about the figs? What's unique about the fig fruit? that he has to mention the fig fruit of the land of Israel? Because the figs can grow gradually in Shabbat. Regarding Shabbat, we mentioned it yesterday. That one of the 39 malachot on Shabbat is carrying. And by the way, people should know that carrying is most probably one of the least understood malachot on Shabbat. People think, what am I doing? I put a tissue in my pocket, I go out to what am I doing? The people don't realize they're violating it's one of the 39 malachot. There's a malacha called, you're not allowed to build on Shabbat, can't build a building, you can't go to the field and cut the grain, you can't carry in a public domain on Shabbat. So people forget about it, right?
People use it almost as a loophole that maybe it not be so important, because if they can even consider an error, then they.
Right. Very good point. So people have to be aware that Eruv is only able to be made, you only could put an Eruv in a place that the domain is rabbinically prohibited to carry. So then Eruv gives you an allowance to carry, you're allowed to carry. But a place that's considered a Rishut Rabim min Torah, a place that's called a public domain at Torah level, Eruv will not help. That's why Moshe Feinstein says that Manhattan, he considers Manhattan as the Rishut Rabim Daraita. He considers Manhattan as a public domain that on a Torah level, and therefore he says you can't make an Eruv. That's his opinion. Cannot. That's what Moshe Feinstein's opinion. In Manhattan. Good morning, Mr. Amos.
And some rabbis said we have a letter. I asked to receive a letter. There is no letter. So then there's no.
No, I didn't say there's no Eruv. No, there might be some. There are some people that give. There's an organization that gives a hashgacha on an Eruv from certain places, but that Eruv is not in accordance with the opinion of Moshe Feinstein. It's according with other opinion. You know what I'm saying? That's all I wanted to point out. But you shouldn't. What's that again? That's the question. In the suburbs, in the small neighborhoods, those that are Rabbanan, there you can make an Eruv. Not in China. But in Manhattan, when it's such a big, in a small area, densely populated, so many people in a small area, that's where we get into a question. That's where the questions are about making an Eruv in such a place. Now, so regarding Shabbat, by the way, you should know in Masechta Shabbat, which we hope, Bez Hashem, we finish Berachos, we should start Shabbat, I think. If that makes sense. Mr. Haver, what do you think? I'm dreaming about it, I think. Hopefully we got to get to Shabbat. And the first thing that Shabbat discusses is
Sounds amazing, Rabbi.
What'd you say, Mike?
It sounds amazing. We're ready for it.
You're ready. His mic is ready. You're looking
We're staying
forward.
tuned for it. Yes, exactly.
It's in the pipeline. So what is the first thing Masechta Shabbat discusses is carrying on Shabbat. The first thing that the Masechta talks about, it's called Yisiyat HaShabbat, the first parak of Shabbat. Why does it talk about carrying? So one of the commentators said, because that is one of the greatest challenges on Shabbat. Therefore, the Tana organized it that the first thing we're going to discuss when you're going to have a Kabbalat Panim, when you're going to be greeted with Masechta Shabbat, which is a big Masechta, like 150 pages, 150 dapim. The first thing you're going to see is about carrying. How do you like that, Mr. Ava? Right? That's what it's about. So now regarding Shabbat, if a person carries something, what is this? If you carry food, it depends on different items on Shabbat. Different items have different chashivut. Different items, a certain amount of this is considered something of significance. So if I carry something, the size of almost nothing, a little nothing, it will not be subject to the punishment for carrying on Shabbat. Because there's a certain amount that he has to carry that's considered you did something of value, of importance, of significance, something that people, and therefore if you carried something the size of a dried fig, a food the size of a dried fig, that's considered an amount of food that people keep, people will store away, meaning something that's very smaller than that, people might not store away, people might not keep. But if it's something that the size of, if it's something of significance, what's called significant amount of food, the size of a dried fig, that's an amount that people will keep, will store away and save. And therefore, if you carry that, that means you carried something of significance. It's not like you carry a little nothing, what people have no use for it. People throw it out, they don't care, it's not meaningful. But if you carried a food the size of a fig, dried fig, that's considered that you did something of meaning. Is that clear? And therefore, that's the importance of a dried fig. That's why you need to know about Israel is known for its figs. You know why Israel is known for its figs? Because you got to remember about the law of carrying on Shabbat. I think it's usually by volume. I think that's what I think. Most things are by volume, not by weight. I mean, whatever. Yeah, we have to, again. It's a good question. What size fig, right? There's all different types of figs too. So it needs to be looked into exactly what type of, what fig we're talking about. But now, the Gemara continues. Rimon, pomegranate. What do I got to know? How does the pomegranate affect my life as a Jew? Right? We're saying each one of the 7 species affects my life as a Jew. There's halachic ramifications. What's the halachic ramification of Rimon?
Rimon is mitzvot.
Say it again, Yosef.
Rimon is the number of the seeds like the mitzvot.
Right. Rimon is full of seeds, symbolic of mitzvot, and we all got to fill ourselves up with mitzvot. But there's halachic ramifications. What do you say?
We use it for Shechianu in Rosh Hashanah. We use it for Shechianu the second night of Rosh Hashanah.
Very good. Very good. So, but the question is, but what's the ramification regarding halacha of halachot that applies to the Torah regarding shiurim, regarding measurements? So the Gemara says that if you have let's say you have a wooden box, a wooden container, and that wooden container came in contact was in the tent of a corpse, or came in contact with a dead body, the wooden container becomes tameh, right? And now what happened? You want to go ahead and in order for this container to, if it's no longer a container, if it breaks, if this container breaks, if it gets a hole in it, a certain size hole, if it has a certain size hole, that size will make the container no longer usable. And if it's no longer usable, it's considered that it will not be able to, it won't be tameh anymore. It's like it's broken, and it won't be tameh anymore. It won't be contaminated anymore. So the Gemara says, the Gemara says the following: if the hole is the size of a pomegranate, that means a pomegranate would fall through. If it's the hole the size that a pomegranate would fall through, then it's considered a broken utensil, and therefore it will not be contaminated anymore. So the Gemara says, let's see what it says. So the Gemara says the following: Kidetnan, kli balabatim. If you have a keli of a balabatim means somebody who it's a household utensil. It's not made for sale. It's not that you are a businessman and you're selling these utensils. We're on the last words of the page. Kli balabatim. What do you say?
Balabatim mean it's like the landlords.
Right. Landlords, right? Or balabatim means the balabayit, like you said, the balabayit. You give a
the owners of utensils or whatever.
Right. Or a balabatim, the balabayit azeh. You give a bracha when you do zimun, bikat hamazon. You bless. You give a bracha to the host. You also shalayevosh balabayit. Whether he rents the apartment, he owns the apartment, he's serving the meal. It's called the balabayit. So the owner of the house, the person who lives in the house, a utensil that's used for personal use, if it gets a hole, the side, now we're turning the page, shiurin kirimonim. If it gets a hole the size of a pomegranate, Mr. Haber, we turn the page now on 41B. Morris, you got it? We turn the page. If it gets the hole of a pomegranate, at that point, then it's on, it's gone. Then you'll throw out the utensil. Then it's considered really broken. It's for the garbage. Because if it, let's say, if it got a hole the size of let's say there's a hole the size of a bean, let's say a lentil, right? Chickpeas. If it got a small little hole, so you know what the person would do? He'll say, you know what? I'll keep it. I'm going to use it for olives. And if it gets, the hole gets big, but if it's a hole the size of that olives would fall through the container, the person says, you know what? I'm still going to keep the container. I'll use it for what? For nuts. If for walnuts, I'll keep my walnuts in it. Walnuts are larger, but then it gets a hole the size of walnuts. The walnuts will fall through. I'll use it for my pomegranate. Once it gets the hole the size of the pomegranate, then it's gone. As you know, the pomegranate is a large fruit, right? It's a large fruit. So therefore, then you're going to get rid of this utensil. At that point, it's considered broken, and therefore it loses its quality of a utensil, and therefore it's no longer contaminated because it's no longer, it lost its identity. It's considered broken. This is how Rashi explains the Gemara. And Rashi says, but if there's a utensil, let's say you have a box, a wooden box that you're going to sell, right? You're in the business of selling wooden boxes. So then it's a much smaller amount you would get rid of it. Meaning if you're in this business of selling stuff, so obviously you're going to sell items that are multi-purpose or people could use for many things. If you're not going to be, if you have a utensil and it's only going to be used to sell for someone who wants to use it to store pomegranates, I mean, the hole is so big, the only thing that could go into it is pomegranates. You're going to throw out such a utensil. And therefore, that's how Rashi explains the Gemara. That's why the Gemara emphasizes klei shel balabatim. If it's for personal use, people go ahead and are more, they'll use it for more purposes. But if you're in the business world, you'll get rid of it faster. Just like, let's say if you have a tie, right? You have a tie. Okay, you know what? It has a little something. You'll still wear it. But if you're the manufacturer of the tie, you're selling the ties. You can't sell such a tie because it has there's something you got to get rid of it. So that's what the Gemara says. Now, Eretz Zei Shemen. The Gemara, the Gemara says the land that gives off honey. Oil. It flows with oil, which refers to the olives. So what's the idea of the, again, everyone got that last point clearly? If you have a utensil that became tamei, that's contaminated, one of the ways that it loses its contamination when it's broken. So we're saying if it's broken, the size of how is it considered broken? If the hole is large enough that a pomegranate would fall through, that's considered broken, and therefore it's no longer contaminated. Okay, clear? Now I want to get to the next point. Now the olive. What's the point of the olive? Amar Rav Yossi, Reb Chanina. Eretz shekol shurei kazeitim. It's the land that all of its measurements go by a what? By the olive. So the Gemara is going to shoot back. What do you mean? You just told me there's other measurements in this world. There's measurements of wheat, and there's measurements of barley, and there's measurements of pomegranate. So how could you tell me a land that all its measurements are with the kazayas, with the size of an olive? So the Gemara says, "V'ika hanach ta'amaron." What do you kol sheres hakadaitach? Are you saying all the measurements of the Torah go by an olive? V'ha'ika hanach ta'amaron. There are those that we just said that they don't go by the olive. They go by some other measurements. So the Gemara says, "Ela eretz sherov shureha kazeisin." it's the land that's the majority of the measurements of the Torah. What's number one on the list, on the board? If you have to list, who's the number one that has the most measurements, which fruit do we use the most out of all foods to measure it for different situations? It's the olive. Meaning to say, if you want to know how much matzah you have to eat on Pesach, it's an olive. If you want to know how much blood, if a person eats a certain amount of blood, that they would get lashes, if they eat blood of an animal, how much will be an olive size. You want to know many things that the Torah says you can't eat, it's an olive. So not kosher is an olive. Pork is an olive, right? So I'm saying all those things are an olive. Therefore, that's what the Gemara meant. Most shurim are with an olive. And I just want to suggest maybe that's why it's interesting, the pasuk. We had this pasuk, which is going to be very important to remember the way the pasuk is written. When the Torah tells us about the 7 species of Israel, it says, it opens up by saying, Eretz, it's a land of wheat, barley, vines, figs, pomegranates, and then it says a land, again it says land of olives and dates. So if you notice, the pasuk says the word Eretz twice. It opens up with it's a land of Chita, of Sorah. It opens up with Eretz. And then in the middle of the pasuk, after it lists five products of land of Israel, product number 6 and 7, it precedes before identifying number 6 and number 7, it says it's a land of this. So the obvious question is, why does the Torah repeat the word Eretz twice? Meaning, if you tell me you're listing what it's a land of, God bless you. It's a land of wheat, barley, A, B, C, D. So list me the 7 things. Why say it's a land of wheat, barley, A, B, C, and pomegranates, and then you say and a land of olives and dates? Why do you repeat the word land again? Is that a good question? I think it's a very, very valid question. So based on this Gemara, I think we have an answer to the question, because there's something unique about the olive, that most of the shiurim, most of the measurements of the Torah go by the olive. Because of that, it emphasizes Eretz Zeis. It's the land of the olive. Why is it the land of the olive? It's the land of the olive because most of the shiurim, most of the measurements of the Torah go by the olive. So therefore it says Eretz, it's the land of the olive. It's emphasizing the olive because the olive is the one that has this quality and nothing else has. So maybe that's why the Torah, you can't just refer to olive as olive. You have to refer to Eretz Zeis. It's referred to as a land of olives. That's maybe why the Torah writes it. And we're going to see soon in the Gemara, by the fact that it says Eretz it's Eretz again, gives anything that follows that Eretz also great strength. Because whatever is close to the Eretz is going to be stronger than the thing that's further away from the word Eretz. So the fact, meaning to say we have 7 things listed in the Pasuk. Pomegranates is listed before olives. It's listed as number 5 from the first Eretz. But since after it says pomegranate, it says Eretz again, and then comes the olive, which is listed after pomegranates, we're going to see takes precedence to the pomegranate. Why? Because the olive is close to its Eretz. There's the Eretz that precedes the pomegranate, which is written, and there's the Eretz that precedes the olive. The Eretz, when the pomegranate is mentioned, Eretz was listed like 4 or 5 fruits earlier. There was Eretz, and then the pomegranate was the number 5 following Eretz. Olives was mentioned number 1 after Eretz, because there's 2 Eretzes. We're going to find there's 2. The Torah says the word Eretz twice in that pasuk. 1, it says Eretz, Chita, Sora, Geffen, something, and Rimon. Then it says Eretz, Shem, Zayis, and Dvash. So it says Eretz twice, and we're going to see that whoever's closer to Eretz is the winner. So you could be, the irony is you could be written later in the Torah. The Aleph is going to be written number 6 in the listing, but it's number 1 to the second Eretz. And therefore that's going to be greater than the pomegranate, which is number 5 to the first Eretz. And the other foods, that's number 4 to the Eretz or number 3 to the first Eretz. If you're number 1 to the second Eretz, you get special. We'll see as the Gemara will play it out. Let's continue in the Gemara. Dvash. What's the importance and significance of Dvash? What's the important significance of the dates? Honey. Honey is referring to the dates. That has to do with the large date on Yom Kippur. We said the Torah says you have to on Yom Kippur. You're supposed to, I don't want to use the word afflict yourself, but it's you're supposed to afflict yourself. That's the word, not to hurt yourself. But you're not supposed to be eating and drinking on Yom Kippur. At what point did you violate the prohibition of the Torah if you ate on Yom Kippur? How much would a person have to eat? What is the amount, the minimum amount that a person has to eat in order for him to violate the prohibition that he will be subject to karet? How much is he? If he eats a little bean, he does not get karet for that on Yom Kippur. He has a candy, he will not get karet for eating on Yom Kippur. He did a sin, he should not have eaten the candy on Yom Kippur, but because he did not meet, in order to get the karet, he has, or malkut, or lashes, if he was warned and there was witnesses, he has to eat a big kosevet, let's hear the lashon. Kosevet, here's the lashon of the Gemara. 1 second. It says a big date. You have to eat a big date. Kosevet hagasa, a big date at B'Yom Kippurim. That's why the Torah tells us about the date by the land of Israel, because the date is very important for what reason? For Yom Kippur. That's where it comes into play. So the Gemara says, V'ida, what does the other person do with this? Rabbi Yitzchak, how does he know these shurim? How does he know? He's using the pasuk of Eretz Chita to tell you what comes first, what comes second. He's not using it for shurim, he's not using it for measurements. But how does he know all these measurements if he's using it for something else? Say it again. If a person eats a half of a date, he's not subject to karet. He has to eat a full date, and the date is a large date. But what does he do? The other opinion, how does he know these laws? If he uses this pasuk for something else, he uses this pasuk to tell me what comes first, what comes second in the order of brachot. So the Gemara says, Hani shiurim, and we're going to end with this. Hani shiurim behedya miksivi. Did the Torah write openly these shiurim? Did the Torah write wine? The Torah writes dates. Did the Torah, let's say wine, did the Torah say it's a revi'at of wine? The Torah say how much wine it's going to be? Well, the Torah writes, let's say the Torah writes, what's another one it writes? It writes, let's say wheat. Did it tell us how much exactly more details about the wheat? How you eating the wheat? Which way you eating the wheat? So the Gemara said you're eating b'kdei achilas pras. It's not written in the Torah over. So you know what? Even the shiurim, that the amounts, they're not written openly. Ella midrabanan. Some say the gears of Tosfot is hilchataninu. These are halachot. The halachot and across smachta ba'alma. The pasuk is in a smachta, meaning to say the following: the shiurim, even though you can't learn out clearly from these psukim the clear detail of the shiurim of the measurements. The easy one to look at is the wine. The Torah says wine. Do you know how much wine the Torah means? The fact the Torah says wine, you don't know it means a revi'at. You need the halacha l'Moshe Sinai to tell you that what does it mean, wine? It means how much wine? A revi'at of wine, 3 ounces of wine. So therefore, these psukim are only an asmachta. It's alluding to these laws. It's alluding to the fact of their special shurim, but it's not, we don't learn, this is not the source for the shurim. If you want to know, how do you know the measurements for all different things in the Torah? That's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Not from this pasuk, because the pasuk doesn't have enough details to tell you. It's not giving you all the details. The pasuk is alluding to it. All the details to know how much is the measurement, exactly how much, the way you have to eat it, so on, how much time period you have to eat it. That's all halacha. Hashem, when Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu the Torah, gave him the written law and the oral law, and he explained to him this is the, and therefore that's not a. How does he? You want to know how the other rabbi uses his pasuk for something else? How does he know the laws of the shurim? How does he know the measurements? He knows the halacha, Moshe Sinai. We look forward. We should keep on learning and know all the
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi, if Yom Kippur, someone have a Brit Milah, do you have to do a Kiddush for the Brit Milah, or you skip the meal and you do it after Yom Kippur?
They do the meal. They do the bris on Yom Kippur, and the meal is after Yom Kippur because they cannot eat on Yom Kippur. Even though they do a beautiful Brit, I attended such a thing. They had the Brit on Yom Kippur, and afterward, after Yom Kippur, yeah, they had a beautiful Suda.
What about the wine blessing and all that?
What'd you say?
What they have to do wine blessing, right?
It could. I wonder. I don't remember how they did it. I wonder if they gave it to a minor. Maybe they might. I wonder if they gave
That's
it to.
what normally do, I think. Yeah, I think they
would-
give it to a minor.
But I have to look it up.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
On the Shivat HaMinim, it says in the end, it counts the 7 Shivat HaMinim, but then it says Dvash
Right.
in
So
the same
Dvash-
sentence. So
Say it
why
again?
people don't? So they count the Eretz, and then he counts 5, and then he adds Eretz, like you said, Zayit. I forgot the last one, and then
Zay Shemen Zayit Udvash.
Dvash. Why the Dvash? Nobody mentioned about it. It's like it's in the same sentence, but it seems like everybody forgot about the Dvash.
Okay, very good. So they say that Dvash, when the Torah says Dvash, it's not referring to the honey. Some say it's referring to the date that makes the honey. That's why people. That's where the people don't talk about honey as a Shivat HaMinim. It's the date. The honey comes from the date, but the date is the one that has the strength.
And the shemen refers to the shemen from the Zayit.
Yeah, yes. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Yes.
And
Thank
the
you.
shemen
Thank you.
and the shemen refers the shemen
you.
from the Zayit.
The Shemen,
Yeah.
right, very good. Exactly. When it says Shemen Zayit, it's referring to Zay Shemen. It's referring to the olive. Correct. Exactly. Okay.
Okay, Rabbi, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Great
Bye.
day, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.